And welcome to Hometown Cable. My name is Bob Venne. We're in Plattsburgh, New York in the county building. This is the lobby you see when you come in the front entrance. And right off to the right is the Department of Motor Vehicles. We're not here to get our license changed. We're here for a 7:30 meeting in the meeting room just down the hall, just right about in behind that wall. It's going to be a discussion by two different people tonight. One will be talking about the Champlain College when it was here in Plattsburgh, New York, from 1946, I believe, straight through to 1953. I think it was 7 or 8 years here. I'm a graduate of Champlain College. They'll be talking about Champlain College and also about the fight they had at the time to bring the air base to Plattsburgh. They were checking out 3 different sites in the area, and we'll be hearing about that. Just getting a few pictures out in the lobby, and then we'll be going inside. It's a nice clear night in Plattsburgh. It's Monday night. Please stay with us.
Let's see this exhibit by the little kids.
Oh, out there, yes. Well, we're looking at the 1997 Board of Legislators, 10 of them, including the chairman, right there, Don Garrett. We're not getting much good and next to him, Celine Paquette from Champlain. Got to check some of these other names here. Mrs. Perry, Bob Bruno. Got to check his name. Peru Legislature. Mr. Joe Giroux from Beekmantown area. Have to check that one. And Sam Champlain from the Ellenburg area, District 2, I believe. Let me check the other names. This is Bob Shimko, Jim Blaze from the Peru area, and this is Mr. May. We'll check this lady and be right back. Yet I recognize it, that's Nancy Dufresne. That's our 10 people who make up the legislative body for Clinton County. Will be inside. The next voices you hear will be for the meeting. It's put on by the Clinton County Historical Association, and right on 48 Court Street. And there are 2 displays currently at the rooms. One is on the Irish, and the other is on Champlain College. I believe the Irish will be done at the end of April, and the Champlain College will be finished at the end of March.
Go down cold.
Hello, how are you, Jim?
And so he was wondering.
That's a good one. That is good.
I'm down on the internet, so don't send me anything already.
I'd like to welcome all of you here tonight. It's good to see you. One of the good things that this organization does is support education in a lot of different ways. We'll be doing that tonight. We did it earlier today. We have put in an exhibit based on school children's work in the lobby showcases here. Later in the month, we are co-sponsoring North Country History Day, which, if you read your North Country notes, is going to be on March 22nd over at Sibley Hall at SUNY. This is a chance for young people to do historic research and present projects based on that research. And it is open to the public between 10 and 2. It's a good opportunity to let these kids know that the public is interested in what they're doing and supports these kinds of activities. Tonight, and any time that you have given us membership dues, help with the drawing or whatever, all of those kinds of things help support all these educational activities. So don't think the money's not going somewhere, it is. And we're very grateful for your support. Tonight we have two students from SUNY who will be presenting papers related to the establishment of Champlain College on the grounds of the Plattsburgh Barracks, and also then the establishment of the air base and the closing of the college. First will be Deborah Kema, who is a senior history major, and she has been an intern at the Historical Association this past fall. She created an exhibit based on the story of Champlain College, and as a result of this research has written this paper. Our second speaker will be Jonathan Galifano, a graduate student in education, and he will be speaking on the decision to build the air base. So at this time, I'm going to turn the meeting over to Deborah, and we'll get started.
Okay, I've been told that I don't project very well, so if people in the back can't hear me, please just let me know and I'll try to talk louder. Okay. This paper is a result of research which was directed toward the installation of a commemorative exhibit at the Clinton County Historical Association. Therefore, the concentration is on Champlain College's history and includes an overview of the opening of the college in 1946, its expansion to a state university in 1950, the turbulent spring and summer of 1952 when its continuance was threatened, and finally a brief discussion of its closing and relocation in 1953. When World War II suddenly terminated in the summer of 1945, New York State was confronted with the fact that 1,500,000 veterans would have to be absorbed almost immediately into the social, political, and economic life of the state. Anticipating a recurrence of the dissatisfaction which had emerged following the First World War, the U.S. Congress passed several bills in 1944 for the protection and benefit of the returning World War II veterans. One of these, the Servicemen's Readjustment Act, otherwise known as the GI Bill of Rights, was significant partly because of the impact it had on the veterans' education as well as on the American academic system. According to this GI Bill, all veterans would be entitled to federally funded education, which was to be provided by the individual states. In New York State, this bill led directly to the formation of the Associated Colleges of Upper New York, or ACUNY, in 1946. Developed by then-Governor Thomas E. Dewey, the initial plan for ACUNY was a cooperational system between the state government and the private universities. However, this plan was rejected by the private schools because they wanted more control than was proposed in it. Hence, ACUNY began as a state-run, independent public system, that of a temporary two-year university, offering specialized programs which would prepare students for transfer to further study at four-year schools. At the war's end, in May 1946, surplus military bases became available for civilian use, and following federal surveys and studies to assess their suitability for educational purposes, 3 of these former military installations were transferred to the state of New York to be used as temporary university sites. Included in the charter contract, however, was a stipulation that they were subject to recapture by the War Assets Administration in the event of a national emergency. In keeping with this arrangement, Sampson Naval Training Center near Syracuse became Sampson College, Utica's Rhodes General Hospital gave way to Mohawk College, and on September 23, 1946, Champlain College opened for classes at the site of the former Plattsburgh Barracks. Champlain's opening convocation was combined with a welcome home celebration for returning veterans, which included a parade, fireworks, and an address by Governor Dewey. In this speech, the governor capitalized on the patriotic fervor of the celebration, dedicating Champlain College to the cause of human freedom. Champlain enrolled 1,800 students in the first semester, the majority of which were returning veterans. The non-discrimination policy of both the GI Bill and the ACUNY Charter assured that no student would be excluded from admission on the basis of race, sex, or economic condition. In addition, the college recruited male as well as female students from local areas and as far away as New York City. This is the cover from the booklet that's on the table if you want to look at it later, just showing that women students were recruited as well as men. Some college advertisements were directed specifically toward women, and alumnus Peter M. Lenhart, now living in Clearwater, Florida, recalls hearing about Champlain College from a recruiter who visited his Brooklyn high school and distributed Champlain banners and pennants. He perceived Champlain as an opportunity that he otherwise might not have had to obtain a college education. As the veteran education emergency diminished and the initial two-year graduates continued on to full universities or to the private sector, so too did the need for 3 AQU institutions diminish. Therefore, in 1948, the new AQU president, Frederick A. Morris, deemed his first task to be what historian and Professor Amy M. Gilbert called a re-estimation of student enrollment and financial budgets, because there were fewer applications for admissions than previously anticipated. Due to its small size and high operational costs, Mohawk College was the first of the 3 to close its doors in June of that year. In November, the New York State Board of Regents and the Education Department also reevaluated the future of Sampson and Champlain colleges. This investigation resulted in the extension of Champlain's charter to 1950, and in 1949 it was further advanced to 1951. Sampson did not fare as well, however, as President Morse's study concluded that this institution should close following the spring 1949 semester. This left Champlain as the last survivor of the 3 emergency GI colleges, and in the near future it was to expand rather than to follow the fate of the other 2. At the same time that AQUNY had been providing new educational opportunities for returning veterans and New York State high school graduates, Governor Dewey was working on a plan for a new 4-year state university system which would continue and expand the policy of non-discriminatory admittance, which had been begun by AQUNY. The then optimistic outlook for Champlain's continuance resulted in the college's expansion to a 4-year liberal arts school in 1950 as part of this system. This adjustment from a temporary preparatory university, which primarily specialized in engineering, humanities, and business administration, to a 4-year liberal arts program required an accompanying alteration in the academic design. Hence the 1951 inauguration of President Morse's Champlain Plan. According to this program, which historian Janet Walmsley notes is reflected in today's educational ideas, students were required to complete a broad general course of study before continuing on as juniors and seniors to more specialized instruction. Moreover, as they progressed through the program, students received vocational guidance and job placement assistance. Champlain's conversion to a state university and the implementation of this comprehensive educational plan were deliberate steps toward making the college a permanent local institution. However, there were indications that the faculty, administration, and students who initiated the college building process in 1946 had more than temporary intentions from the beginning. Proof of this is the wide variety of clubs and extracurricular activities, some of which were organized before the doors opened. Accordingly, in December 1946, New York Herald Tribune writer William Zinsser noted many of these activities in his column. He wrote that at Champlain, there is a student council, a student forum, a dramatic club, a radio workshop, a debate club, a French club, and every other kind of club. There is a 30-piece symphony orchestra, a concert band, a glee club, and a dance band giving weekly broadcasts. There is a wide variety of intramural sports and a basketball team that opens a 17-game schedule this week, and appropriate cheers are now being invented. In addition to these activities, by 1950, Champlain had college-affiliated fraternal organizations as well as baseball, football, hockey, tennis, track, and several other sports teams which regularly competed in league play. Just as Champlain College's academic and social programs seem to be flourishing, however, reminders of its inception as a temporary emergency institution began to undermine its advancement. In 1950, the same year that Champlain expanded to a 4-year university, the United States Air Force began investigating the possibility of locating a new bomber base across the lake in Burlington, Vermont. Recognizing the economic benefits which accompany the planning, building, and existence of this kind of enterprise, a committee was formed to lobby to bring the new base to Plattsburgh. Headed by then Mayor John J. Tyrrell, by 1952 this committee had convinced the Air Force to consider local sites for the base. 3 locations were suggested at that time: the municipal airport, Point of Rush, and the former Plattsburgh Barracks property. If this last site was chosen, it would mean closing Champlain College. The February 7, 1952 announcement by the Air Force that it was indeed interested in the barracks site triggered what a 1957 Press Republican writer labeled undoubtedly the greatest battle in Plattsburgh since the War of 1812. The effort to bring a base to Plattsburgh, even at the cost of losing the college, was led by Mayor Tyrrell and Clyde A. Lewis, a local lawyer with connections in Washington, D.C., and a former commander of the Veterans of Foreign Wars. Other significant local supporters of the decision included the Plattsburgh Common Council, the County Board of Supervisors, the local Trades and Labor Assembly, and various private businesses and contracting and construction companies. The opposing faction came together in an effort to promote alternative locations for the proposed base. And there's a map here that shows the alternative locations if you want to look later. The X's represent the runway layouts for each one and the surrounding areas. Although this group favored the construction of a base locally, they were adamantly opposed to any plan which jeopardized the existence of Champlain College. In the forefront of this opposition was the 25 to 30 member Plattsburgh Citizens Committee for the continuance of Champlain College. This committee was strongly supported by then New York State Assemblyman James A. Fitzpatrick and former state senator and judge and current chairman of the State Public Service Commission, Benjamin F. Feinberg. Feinberg had been instrumental in bringing the college to Plattsburgh in 1946, and his commitment to its continuance was manifested by the split which resulted between him and his law partner, the aforementioned Clyde Lewis. In addition to these powerful politicians, the committee's position also was endorsed by the Plattsburgh Chamber of Commerce. A March poll of its members revealed that 86% were in favor of an Air Force bomber base in Plattsburgh or vicinity, but that 70% were against such a base at the expense of losing Champlain College. With the looming possibility of sacrificing the college, the Citizens Committee enlisted the help of professional engineers, accountants, and sociologists in the preparation of a booklet to be presented at a May 19, 1952 congressional hearing of the Armed Services Committee in Washington, D.C., titled Analysis of Three Possible Air Base Sites at Plattsburgh, New York. This booklet began with a detailed comparison of the three alternative locations, citing economic and safety reasons why the former barracks was the least desirable choice. Also, I made a copy of this booklet if anyone wants to look through it later. The booklet's in-depth financial analysis concluded that conversion of the college would exceed similar costs at either of the other two sites by $2,500,000. Moreover, as the argument went, natural and man-made barriers made the possibility for expansion at this site virtually impossible. Furthermore, hazards such as Bluff Point, the Delaware and Hudson Railroad lines, the Saranac River to the west, Lake Champlain to the east, gasoline and oil storage tanks, Highways 9 and 22, and other lesser dangers would unnecessarily risk the safety of the multi-million-dollar bombers which would use the airdrome. Reinforcing this argument was the committee's conclusion that the barracks location between the Saranac and Lake Champlain made it the easiest target of the three sites for enemy air attack. This reasoning was significant in the post-World War II Cold War nuclear weapons and Red Scare atmosphere in which bomb shelters and air raid drills were commonplace. In addition to these arguments against locating the new base at the former barracks site, the next section of the committee's booklet outlined the reasons for retention of the college in Plattsburgh. Federal forecasts for increased nationwide college applications by 1960 were combined with the claim that Champlain's enrollment had increased over 200% above the previous year, at a time when, according to the committee's report, college applications were down as much as 20% throughout the country. Furthermore, in a March 1952 publication titled Let This College Live, also on the table for examination, the committee noted that the future of Champlain looks bright. This brochure estimated September 1952 enrollment at between 700 and 800 new students, had not the present crisis come about. Besides claiming this relative prosperity, the committee also asserted in their analysis that the expansion of Champlain to a state university, the development of the cutting-edge Champlain plan, and the continuing need for an equal opportunity liberal arts institution in the region all presented strong arguments for the college's continuance. New life was breathed into the Save the College campaign when the Armed Services Committee, following the May 19th hearing, ordered a restudy of the three proposed sites. Impressed by the committee's comprehensive analysis, New York Republican Representative W. Sterling Cole proposed this new cost comparison to determine the validity of the Citizens Committee's arguments. There was great pressure for a timely study because the fiscal year was to end on July 1st, meaning that congressional approval for appropriations of base funding would have to be completed by that date for construction to begin in the fall. Debate between the two local factions continued frantically for the next few weeks. The Plattsburgh Press Republican and other newspapers regularly printed editorials and articles outlining the opposing views. Especially indicative of the divisive quality of the issue were the Syracuse Post-Standard June 11th front page headlines. On the left half of the page was an article titled "Bomber Base to Boom North Country Business." In an interesting juxtaposition of stories, two separate headlines on the right side read, "Approval of Site Dooms College" and "Students Wage Continued Fight to Save College." Despite valiant efforts by the committee, Champlain students and faculty, State University administrators, Fitzpatrick, Feinberg, and others, on June 10th, the House Armed Services Committee authorized the necessary funding for base construction on the former barracks property. After abandoning further efforts to urge use of an alternative location, the Citizens Committee turned its attention to the relocation of Champlain College. Planning for this contingency, Assemblyman Fitzpatrick had introduced a bill in early March for the removal of Champlain College to some other site in Clinton County if its property was recaptured. Also at that time, state university officials had proposed plans for absorption of the students and faculty by other schools in the state. As the only other liberal arts state university, Harper College in Binghamton was mentioned as a possible choice for this integration. The Citizens Committee reacted to this last proposal with a statement in their Let This College Live pamphlet, asserting that it was a poor solution because Harper was too small to take in all of the students and faculty. Furthermore, they argued that the faculty could not possibly be absorbed by the other state universities, where the academic programs were more specialized than Champlain's liberal arts syllabus. These practical statements were followed by the sentimental assertion that the ambiance and interplay of personalities at Champlain could not be recreated elsewhere. Finally, however, Champlain College was absorbed by Harper College, and Harper was enlarged and expanded eventually to become SUNY Binghamton. Despite another delay, this time due to discrepancies concerning proposed costs for base construction, in March 1953, conversion of the former barracks in Champlain College to a United States Air Force base got underway. Janet Walmsley has written that the reasons for Champlain's displacement are elusive, although various explanations have been put forth. One of these is a suggestion, which Jonathan will make in his paper, that the ultimate choice of the barracks site was motivated by a Red Scare McCarthy-supported effort to rid Plattsburgh of a communist threat. A member of the Citizens Committee claimed in an interview that he and several of his colleagues were followed and that his cell phone was tapped. Certainly, anti-communist witch hunts were occurring in the United States during this period. Moreover, local and regional newspapers were used by both sides to intimate accusations of un-Americanism. For instance, in a March 4th full-page Press Republican ad sponsored and paid for by a large group of business and professional men, also the trades and labor simply, Plattsburgh citizens were asked why, for reasons of national defense, should anyone wish to criticize or to try to interfere with the decisions of our armed forces. I'm going to switch these really quickly, so if you want to look at them again later, we can come back. This seemingly was in response to a similar advertisement by the Citizens Committee, which questioned the Air Force's logic in eliminating a prospering educational institution. In defense of the un-American charges, a statement in Let This College Live claimed that the pro-college group was not anti-U.S. Air Force, but that they merely were suggesting that every alternative should be explored before such a drastic step is taken. Another suggested explanation of the site choice was the presence of luxury buildings which could be used for officers' quarters. The then Secretary of the Air Force, Harold Talbot, claimed that the convenience of already standing living quarters would considerably hasten base construction. Furthermore, a March 4th press release from Governor Dewey's office explained that avoidance of the duplication of local military facilities outweighed the cost differential. In other words, convenience and expedience were more important than economics. Probably all of these factors contributed to the displacement of Champlain College by a U.S. Air Base. Although Plattsburgh citizens lament the recent closing of the base and the accompanying economic and sentimental impact of this loss, many Champlain College alumni still struggle to understand why their alma mater was forfeited by the community. Former Secretary of the Board of Regents and Champlain alumnus William Carr believes that Champlain College, rather than Plattsburgh State Teachers College, would have expanded had it been spared. He asserts that Champlain's location was more conducive to growth than the urban confined Teachers College. Former Citizens Committee member Wayne Byrne agrees that since Champlain College was already the local liberal arts state university, it would have remained so, and Plattsburgh State Teachers College would have continued in its specialization as a training facility for teachers and nurses. 50 years after the founding of their alma mater, Champlain College alumni still gather for biennial reunions. William Carr, now self-titled the unofficial keeper of Champlain College memorabilia, maintains an ever-growing roster of nearly 300 living alumni. Although past reunions have been held outside of Plattsburgh, plans for a future local gathering, perhaps in 1998 or 2000, are in the works. In conclusion, I'd like to read two quotes by former Governor Thomas Dewey. The first was on September 23rd, 1946, at the opening of the new college. And it goes, "Champlain College stands today as a living monument to a noble purpose. It is, we hope, a permanent expression of the thankfulness we hold in our hearts for the veterans we are so happy to welcome home today." The second quote, from September 25th, 1950, is taken from the governor's dedication of Champlain as a new state university. "Not too many years hence, your caprices on the campus will be retailed to the young and open-eyed freshmen as the acts of great wisdom on the part of their learned and venerable predecessors." Ironically, 2 years later, Governor Dewey was one of the leaders in the fight for recapture of Champlain College's grounds for use as an Air Force base. Yay.
Alright, like I was introduced, my name is Jonathan Galfano, and I wrote a paper on the development of the Plattsburgh Air Force Base and the fight within the community between supporters of the base and of Champlain College. Before I begin, I would just like to take a moment to offer apologies if this paper is offensive to anybody. In some aspects, it seems biased. That's due to the lack of time I had to research the project and lack of getting in touch with people for interviews that were within the community. So, without further ado. Okay. After World War II, the United States emerged as the world's superpower because of the immense power she displayed in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. This alone-at-the-top mentality quickly changed when it was learned that the Soviet Union had developed an atomic bomb of their own. The world would become the stage for an elaborate display of power by these two nations. The world would become a chessboard on which these two powers would play, trying to influence weaker and smaller countries. The struggle between the United States and Soviet Union created a new type of war, which would be labeled the Cold War. Many skirmishes took place during this Cold War, which included Korea, Vietnam, and the Cuban Missile Crisis. The Soviet Union wanted to spread communism throughout the world, and the U.S. and our allies would try to keep it a policy of preserving democracy around it. In America, the fear of communism intensified when the Soviets created the atomic bomb. The fear of communism spread rapidly throughout the U.S. There was a tremendous fear that there would be a Soviet invasion on the U.S. This fear of communism set the stage for Joseph McCarthy, a senator from Wisconsin. McCarthy's claim to fame was that he was a self-proclaimed communist fighter weeding out the communists within the United States. The years 1950 to 1955 marked the climax of anti-communism in American life. The fear of communism also reached the small town of Plattsburgh, New York. The thesis of this paper is that the call for the Plattsburgh Air Force Base was more than the fear of communism. It was the driving force of McCarthyism. McCarthyism was a political phenomenon that extended well beyond the antics of Senator McCarthy. Prior to the Cold War in 1940, Senator Benjamin F. Feinberg of Plattsburgh wrote a letter to the United States government asking for an air base in his district. Senator Feinberg took pride in his community of Plattsburgh. He would always bring up things like the Plattsburgh idea, which is now the ROTC, Reserves Officers Training Corps. He felt that an air base would complement the proud military heritage of Plattsburgh. Senator Feinberg would always refer to the vicinity of Plattsburgh when discussing the location for a base. In a letter written by Representative Kilburn on August 13, 1940, to Senator Feinberg, a more specific location was mentioned, the Plattsburgh Barracks, but this plan was eventually dropped. After World War II, the Plattsburgh Barracks land was designated U.S. surplus land and was given to the state to use. The state created the Champlain College and it opened on the barracks site on September 23, 1946. The school was created for veterans of the war and for future GI Bills. The college gave soldiers that came home a chance to get an education. Eventually, the college became part of the Associated Colleges of Upper New York, ACUNY for short. When the ACUNY charter ended in 1950, Champlain College was the only school to survive. This implies that the school was becoming a strong educational institution. That same year, it was made one of the 2 new liberal arts campuses in the SUNY system. It was also in 1950 that the plan was announced by the Air Force that a bomber base would be constructed in the northeast region of the country. Eventually, the land that the college sat on would become one of the prime areas sought out by the Air Force. Mayor John J. Tyrrell and an assembled committee worked quickly to encourage the Air Force inspectors to visit Plattsburgh. The inspectors wanted to see if the barracks site would be suitable for an airbase. The inspection was a whirlwind tour arranged when the inspectors landed with little advance notice at the Plattsburgh Municipal Airport in 1952. This according to Janet Walmsley, author of Champlain College versus the United States Air Force. The Plattsburgh Barracks, or the Champlain College, would become the center of a huge battle in the community of Plattsburgh. The community was split. One group supported both education and economic growth for the city. The other group concentrated on the economic and political implications, at times seemingly in opposition to education. The group supporting and encouraging the development of the base was headed by Mayor Tyrrell, and the opposing group that formed in 1950 was the Citizens Committee. According to Mr. Wayne Byrne, an original member of the committee, the main goal of the committee was to continue the existence of Champlain College in Plattsburgh. The committee wanted to see Champlain College become a 4-year liberal arts college. The only college in Plattsburgh was the teaching college. It was used for training teachers and had a nursing program as well. It was believed that the Champlain College would expand and create more economic growth for the community. The Citizens Committee did not feel that an air base would be better for the growth and development for the community, which the air base supporters were claiming. Mr. Byrne and the rest of the committee saw Champlain College as the heart and expansion and growth of the community. Preservation of the college should not be confused with the idea of preventing an air base. The Citizens Committee was also hard at work developing alternate locations for the air base. Mr. Byrne, during World War II, had a hand in constructing air bases. Along with this knowledge and a passion for education, Mr. Byrne and the committee created a 2.5-inch thick booklet showing how the barrack site was not a good location for an air base. It showed how 2 locations outside of Plattsburgh, the municipal airport and Point of Rush, were more suitable for a base. Many members of the community saw the members of the Citizens Committee as disinterested in the future of the community from the viewpoint of employment. As the fear of communism spread, some supporters of the airbase started labeling professors at the Champlain College communists. Many airbase supporters were conservative Republicans, the party in which McCarthyism flourished. According to Mr. Byrne, the people of Plattsburgh thought one way to protect themselves from communists would be to remove them. The way you would remove them would be by removing the college. The fight between the 2 groups waged forward, and it was even seen in the Plattsburgh Press Republican, and we had just seen by Deborah the articles that were up there. The Citizens Committee placed a full-page ad in the paper that asked the community, should the college be the first target of the Air Force? The supporters of the air base ran a rebuttal advertisement which read, why then, for reasons of national defense, should anyone wish to criticize or try to interfere with the decisions of our armed forces? The ad also stated that patriotic Americans make any sacrifice necessary for the protection of the United States. This implies that supporters of the base were using propaganda to get supporters of the Champlain College to change their minds by testing their nationalism. Now let's take a look at the fear of communism. As mentioned earlier, Senator McCarthy waged a war against communists in our country. He accused administrators of government, school teachers, public figures, scientists, and many others of being communist. He ruined many lives by his accusations. It was not until 1954 when the U.S. Senate censored the senator. He could never produce any proof of his accusations, and people slowly began to realize that they might have been getting carried away. McCarthyism reached Plattsburgh just as fast as it reached the rest of the country. According to Mr. Byrne, Senator McCarthy had a real friend in Plattsburgh in Mr. Clyde A. Lewis, a local attorney. Mr. Lewis was a key member in creating the committee that would be pushing for the base. Labeling people communists also had occurred in Plattsburgh. Members of the Citizens Committee were labeled communists and believed that their phones were tapped, and many of the members have admitted to being followed numerous times. Mr. Byrne and other committee members were even blacklisted. To uncover motives in this conflict, it is important to ask who will benefit from building the base. The answer is any contractor or local developer, professionals in the community, store owners, etc. The airbase would bring more people into the community, boosting the economy and creating many new jobs. With the increase of building, labor unions would become stronger, thus boosting the city administration, which was a strong democratic body supported by the labor unions. On the flip side, who would be hurt by the building of the airbase? Obviously, anything or anyone associated with the Champlain College. The college would have to close down or relocate. Students would have to find another school to attend or drop out altogether. The everyday noise produced by an airbase could become a major nuisance for people living right near the base. With the increase of population, roads would be damaged more quickly, and since the base did not pay taxes, the citizens of Plattsburgh would be forced to pay for the street repairs. Usually the people in a community would vote down increasing taxes. The development of an airbase could be viewed as a way to settle a community's fear of communism. An airbase would first drive the accused communist college professors out of Plattsburgh, and second, offer protection against a commie invasion. This fear of a Soviet attack was a reality for the people of Plattsburgh and of the nation. The fear of a surprise air attack could be found in schools where air raid drills were practiced on a daily basis. Even the telephone books had evacuation maps in case of an invasion. People felt that an airbase would offer protection against an airstrike. The paradox of this situation is that having an airbase in Plattsburgh would only make the town a prime target for the enemy. I do not want to make it sound like the Citizens Committee was not interested in the protection from communism. In fact, the committee made it public that if it came down to a choice of losing the Champlain College or no base for the city, they would sacrifice the college. They hoped and believed that it would not come down to this either-or choice. They felt Plattsburgh was big enough for both an airbase and a college. This is why the committee spent the time and money to investigate the Plattsburgh Municipal Airport and Point-a-Rush as alternate locations for the airbase. Earlier I mentioned the pamphlet created by the Citizens Committee stating why the Plattsburgh Barracks was a poor site for an airbase. Well, in 1951, the committee had its chance to attend a congressional hearing in Washington, D.C. They listened to the House Armed Services Committee and then handed in their work, the pamphlet. The committee impressed Major General Patrick W. Timberlake, the head of the installation program for the Air Force. Timberlake said he had never seen a more organized pamphlet before, according to Mr. Byrne. Because the Citizens Committee brought a lot of attention to the problems of the Plattsburgh Barracks site, the government told the Air Force to restudy the sites for the airbase. But it seemed here that the Citizens Committee had won a major battle in their struggle. But however, on June 12, 1952, the Citizens Committee faced its worst fear. The House approved the decision of its Armed Services Committee in selecting the old Plattsburgh Barracks as the site of a $36,261,000 Air Force bomber base. Supporters of the Champlain College could not understand why the Air Force still deemed the barracks site the best possible site for the base. The Air Force felt the barracks site was the most desirable and economical location. The Citizens Committee proved beyond a doubt that the Plattsburgh Barracks site was a poor choice. It specifically showed and explained that because of the two rivers on the sides of the land and the mountains surrounding it, the land would be difficult for an airbase to run efficiently and safely. Point-a-Rush was only 9 miles away, and it was all underdeveloped land. The Air Force could have done anything they wanted there. The Plattsburgh Municipal Airport was obviously a good choice because it already had the experience with planes and proved itself workable. The Citizens Committee must have suspected something was not right with the decision process because they had the support of General Timberlake, as I mentioned earlier. He was a big player in the base site decision and apparently was all for the Citizens Committee's program, according to Mr. Byrne. One could suspect that the fear of communism and the paranoid attitude created by McCarthyism is the reason why the Air Force still focused on the barracks site. Secretary Stuart Symington was the first Secretary of the Air Force. It turned out that Symington was a law partner of Governor Thomas Dewey, who was a political Cold War leader. When campaigning came about, Governor Dewey had turned to Mr. Lewis for help. He appointed Lewis his political drive for getting the military vote out for Dewey in the governor's race. It was through Mr. Lewis that word got back to Senator McCarthy that Plattsburgh was a hotbed of communism, according to Mr. Byrne. Mr. Lewis was able to do this because he was a national commander of the veterans of foreign wars. He had the respect and voice to be a leader against communism. The veterans of foreign wars were scattered throughout the nation and encouraged people to eliminate the forces and influences of communism. Mr. Lewis was very sincere with his idea that communists were in Plattsburgh and that they must be removed. Discussed earlier was the notion that certain professors at the Champlain College were considered communists and became a target for the community. By getting rid of the college and by adding the airbase, a communist hotbed is eliminated and in return, extra national defense is gained. Representative Paul J. Kilday, a Democrat from Texas, wanted a quick end to this mess. He was on the U.S. Armament Committee. Many other locations throughout the country were in the same type of situation, the situation being not communist invasion or McCarthyism, but the situation was over governmental surplus land and the government's ability to reclaim the land. After World War II, the old Plattsburgh barracks site was declared surplus land. The military did not need or have a use for this land. The land eventually was given to the state of New York, who then gave the land for the development of the Champlain College. There was a stipulation in the contract that would allow the federal government to take back the land in the event of an emergency, called the recapture clause. The emergency in the case of the old Plattsburgh barracks site seems to have been the fear of communism. We had to be completely protected from the possible invasion by the Soviets. Representative Kilday wanted this situation in Plattsburgh to be settled fast. He said the situation affected hundreds of similar sites throughout the country, and the settlement of the Plattsburgh controversy would set a precedent. Kilday went on to explain the economics of the barracks site. He quoted Air Force officials as reporting that it would cost an additional $4,249,900 to locate the base at the municipal airport site, and an additional $5,232,600 more to build it at Point of Rush. So according to the Democrat from Texas, the Plattsburgh barracks was a cheaper site, case closed, now build the base. It seems that Kilday did not have any concerns about the education factor that was involved in this situation. It had reached the point that the supporters of education had feared. The Champlain College was closing down, and Plattsburgh was going to get an air base. The community had received its protector from communism. But was the base really a protector? Earlier reference was made to the community's false sense of security if a base was established in Plattsburgh. It was a false sense of security because the building of the base actually put Plattsburgh deeper in the Cold War. Plattsburgh would eventually become a prime target of the Soviet Union. And in terms of an invasion by Soviet planes, the base would not be able to measure up. The reason for this is because the Plattsburgh Air Base would be a bomber base. The planes would be excellent for carrying bombs overseas to drop on Moscow, for example. But if an air skirmish were to occur over Lake Champlain, the planes would be hardly useful. Once the people of Plattsburgh realized that they were a prime target, the typical Cold War defenses began to come about. Many people dug out and built bomb shelters. Hawkins Hall on the Plattsburgh campus was a designated bomb shelter area. Also, bomb shelters were built into or under the hospitals. More and more air raid drills were practiced by the community. The bomb shelters were stocked with food and water and other essentials that would be needed in a time of an emergency. One must think that if the community decided to support the college instead of the air base, all of this trouble of protection from the Soviets may not have been needed. McCarthyism is the only term that fits in this whole college or base ordeal. True, economic figures were argued about and surveys were done to find a better solution. But when it came down to it, Plattsburgh offered an excellent example of McCarthyism. It seemed as if the fear of communism was so great in Plattsburgh that the people would do anything to make themselves feel safe from the communist threats. The Citizens Committee did so much work for the support of the Champlain College and to fight communism. If the Citizens Committee did not feel a need for an airbase or did not care about national defense, would people like Mr. Byrne and others have gone through all the trouble of finding alternative spots for an airbase? It was very difficult and time-consuming for these people to investigate and plan out airbase plans for their two alternative locations. Also, compiling of the 2.5-inch thick booklet was a lot of hard work in itself. They did not have the benefits of modern technology like a computer or photocopy machines. The Citizens Committee showed the government why the municipal airport and Point of Rush were more suitable homes for an airbase. General Timberlake was one of the superior leaders of the armed forces, and he supported the group's program. So why then did the United States government still favor an airbase in Plattsburgh? This was the question on a lot of people's minds. In the political sense, someone had to have pressured General Timberlake to change his position. According to Mr. Byrne, one can imply that political leaders were pressuring Secretary Symington to get the base built in Plattsburgh. He could have been the force behind the change in General Timberlake's decision. Invoking McCarthyism worked so well in this situation. If one examines other areas of anti-communist fear, one will see that the people that were blacklisted, the people that were accused of being communist, and those who were accused of being communist by guilt of association. This meant that you were seen as communist because the people you socialized with were labeled communists. Plattsburgh displayed all of these Cold War attitudes, but Plattsburgh also had a political disguise in this situation. You see, Mayor Tyrrell was a huge supporter of jobs for the city of Plattsburgh. He was a Democratic political leader. The Air Force Base would bring a lot of jobs to the city of Plattsburgh, so the assumption was that the Democrats in Plattsburgh wanted the base. On the other hand, the group that vocally favored and supported the development of the base, led by Lewis, allied with Governor Dewey, were Republicans. So the assumption made here was that all the Republicans in Plattsburgh wanted the base. The problem here is that a two-party government only recognizes two parties. So if the federal government sees both of the parties supporting the idea of an air base, the assumption will be that no one is against the air base. The United States government did not seem to understand that there was another group's needs that had to be addressed here. This group was probably a coalition of Democrats and Republicans. Instead of going along with their political parties, they were fighting for an issue they as a group felt was important. The Citizens Committee was noticed, especially at the congressional hearing, but obviously it was not enough. Maybe if one of the political leaders in Plattsburgh had supported the committee's program, some more attention would have been paid to the Champlain College. The focus of this paper was not to criticize any of the community members of this time period. It was only to show that the fear of communism and the power of McCarthyism were the main reasons for the development of the Plattsburgh Air Force Base at the barracks site. The fear of communism was genuine. People born after the Cold War, or were too young to remember it, may find the community's fears, or even America's fears for that matter, humorous. But this was not a pleasant time period in terms of foreign affairs. And I'd just like to take a moment to thank Mr. Byrne for helping me out when I was writing this paper. He was very, very supportive of me. So just wanted to say thank you.
I want to thank both Deborah and Jonathan for their papers tonight, and also thank all of you for coming. There are a number of items on exhibit up here if you care to take a look. And don't forget about our drawing. If you want to buy tickets, we do have some available tonight. And of course, we have membership brochures for anyone who's interested. Yes?
Perhaps there's a question.
Does anyone have questions?
Mentioned kind of indirectly of Plattsburgh State, the Teachers College. What were the people at Plattsburgh State thinking about all this? Did they see that they might be assimilated into or absorbed by Champlain College, or that was there any threat to them at all? I think you mentioned it today, Deborah, that the assumption was that since it was a downtown location, it probably wouldn't be as well, as it couldn't expand. What were the people who supported the Teachers College doing?
Unfortunately, I don't know the answer to that for a couple of reasons. One reason is time limits on my research, and I was focused mostly on putting the exhibit together and commemorating Champlain College, so that's where I devoted my research. Also, I do remember reading, I'm not sure how much there is available to know about that. I remember reading Janet Walmsley's paper. She did an article for the Antiquarian on this topic a couple of years back, and in her paper she said that it was difficult, that she almost found nothing in regards to their viewpoint. One thing I might say is, I see Dr. Stock is here tonight, and he's written a book about State University history. He may be able to add to that.
Thanks, Deborah. It was a crucial time at the college. President Ward was near the end of his life, and when President Angel came in, he certainly did advocate the closure of Champlain College. His hope was to see a larger and enlarged soon Plattsburgh structure. And how he fell out in this political structure, I don't know. It's possible. Many in the room were eyewitnesses and participants in events. The Angel archival material is still closed. There's very little of Ward's material that survived, more than personal papers. So until we can get access to Dr. Angel's papers, we probably won't know very much more about it than a general picture.
Another question?
I have a question for Deborah, but it's sort of linked to Jonathan's paper.
Jonathan's suggestion of sort of, let's say, communist or cosmopolitan influences on the college could only be verified if Deborah could perhaps answer, were there political clubs? You mentioned all these, I mean, there are glee clubs and a band. There's everything for everybody, you know, but were there political associations, and were there what might be termed, the nice word in those days, were sort of cosmopolitan influences on the campus? I mean,
Not that I came across. I won't say that there weren't.
there were no debating societies, political debating societies.
I didn't see anything like that. Again, my research has been limited by time and by the focus of it, but I've looked through a couple of the yearbooks, and I didn't see anything like that. I won't say that it wasn't, or that it wasn't under some other name.
What was the background, just an additional question, what was the background of most of the professors here? Were they ex-army people too? I mean, had they served in the war?
I don't think so. Most of the professors were recruited from other colleges. In fact, there were several areas in the pamphlets that were put out especially in support of the college where they actually bragged about the background, that they were well-educated professors, came from good institutions.
So
people who wanted to be involved in this new venture, and they believed in the non-discrimination policy. And no, most of them I don't know.
So they're not people you could readily identify with sort of these other influences then?
I don't think so. I think it was, Jonathan could probably speak to that more.
No, actually, that's one of the things that I wish I had more time to do. Dr. Scott, I don't know if you remember talking about this. We wanted to find if we can get in touch with any teachers or any alumni. It was just too time-consuming to do in just one semester of research. But that would have been something that if I ever do plan on, researching this topic further, I would really love to do. Find information regarding the type of teachers, any of the students that were there, things like that. Things to that effect.
As one who lived through this area, I'd like to talk a minute. I agree with you on what you say about communism for the country in general, but I don't think that thought was as serious here, and maybe Wayne will speak to that same subject too. But I was on a committee that went with the college people to Washington. We got to Mr. Finletter's office, who was secretary, when he was secretary of the Air Force. Symington was secretary of war. Is that right? Simonton was there. Simonton was there. What was Finletter? I think he was more. Well, two count. I don't think the local community had so much involvement with communism. I know that I was accused of that at one time, and I just laughed it off. I never took it seriously. And now the question of cost, each side thought they had different cost figures, and I was with a group that thought the Pointer Rush figures were the better figures. We wanted them to be the better figures. I remember a two-star general saying at the Pentagon meeting, and I think I can quote him exactly, the important thing is not what it's going to cost over the years, but what it's going to cost the first year. In other words, the camel gets his head out of it. He's in it.
My name is Bob Venne. I'm a graduate of Champlain College, February 1952. I knew of no political committees there. Joe, did you ever?
No, I don't.
I've never even heard it when we were on campus. Never. I was there from 48.
I think it was a different time. We were not as politically oriented as we are today. Let us put it that way. I think it was a different time of national preparation, and we were still part of the World War II thought. What was good for the Army was good for the nation. Let us put it that way.
My understanding, the reason they were interested in Plattsburgh, it was the shortest route to Russia over the top of the poles. right straight over the top. It was the shortest route possible, which would have been from any of the 3 locations. It didn't have to be at the college. But you got to remember, if the government wants something, they're going to find a reason to put it where they want it. And that's exactly what happened. I think they liked the buildings that were there. They liked the idea of the military having been there since the early 1800s. And they didn't want to spend too much money the first year. They didn't care what it cost later. My children tell me that when they wanted a car. It won't cost much to buy it. I was sorry to see it leave. It was a good school. We were a small number with enough professors. We have several in town. Mayor Rennell was a graduate of Champlain College. Harry Duckworth, who lives down around on the Point, is a graduate of Champlain College. Charlie Lewis, our surrogate that just left, went there his first 2 years. It was a 2-year college then, and went on to Union from there. Bob Pearl from Plattsburgh Dairy is a graduate of Champlain College. There's a man in Moores, his last name, Miller, I think it's George Miller, that graduated from Champlain College. And I'll tell you, there weren't too many of us. I have a ring, I don't wear it anymore. There probably weren't 300 rings in the whole United States. First of all, we didn't have the money to purchase them. And there were only 2 classes or 3 that graduated, I think, at the maximum, because it was a 2-year college, and I graduated in the first 4-year college course. And I was very satisfied.
I might be the only person here who's a reject.
Could you explain that?
I'm a class of 1953 at Elizabethtown High School, and I applied for admission. I was accepted, but then I got a letter in probably February or March, I think, of 1953. I don't know. I should have kept the letter, but I didn't. And so I had to go to my second choice, which was RPI. And I think a lot of graduates from here go to RPI for a 4-year engineering degree?
I don't know. I didn't follow many of them.
I bumped into a few people on campus in Troy who recognized my Adirondack accent and said that they had been up here.
You were first accepted and then rejected? You
Yes.
School closed. Oh.
Yeah.
I think the last class was 53 in June, I think. That was the last. So you had February, both years. I think there were only 12, 14 of us in February, but we got our diploma in June. We got a jump on the rest of the class.
I came here in 1964 to teach at Plattsburgh State, and I had a dated tourist brochure with me. And the first weekend we were here, my wife and I jumped in the car and went out to look for Champlain College because the tourist brochure said there was one. And I thought, well, it'll really be interesting to see the rival of Plattsburgh State. And so we went to the first filling. I didn't use any historical research techniques. We just went to a filling station and said, where's Champlain College? We figured everybody in town would know. And they said, never heard of it. We don't have the slightest idea. So then we went to a candy store that was along the side of the road and said, where's Champlain College? And they said, well, we're almost certain there's no Champlain College here in Plattsburgh because if there were, we would have heard of it. So then we went to a third place and they said, oh yes, that moved across the lake to Burlington, Vermont. And so then we gave up in trying to find Champlain College in 1964.
Should have asked Joe.
Except for the name, there's no connection whatsoever between this one and the one across the lake.
Right.
None whatsoever.
Right. I'm aware of that now.
The students at Plattsburgh State were very anxious to see the students at Champlain College. We were 85% men and they were 80% women at the college at that time, and it made a good match. You remember that, Mr. Burr?
That's where you met Marie.
Long before that.
A lot of before that.
Long
Okay.
before that.
Very interesting. Yes, ma'am. I worked at Champlain College. I was a nurse in the infirmary. And what I'm glad to hear all of this, but it's so different for me because what I saw was the women's from the war and these students coming in and getting in college and then coming to see me because of this and that. And one young man I remember in particular, I don't know what his problems were. When he would get upset, he would walk, and he would walk, and he would walk, and he would come into the infirmary, and he would have blisters on his feet, and he had walked his shoes off, and he had walked, and he would climb the mountains. So he was, and I guess he was just going away from whatever it was in his head that he couldn't face. And so that's the part of Champlain College that I have memories of.
I merely want to say that the paper to which both of our speakers referred by Janet Walmsley is in the special collections of the library. It's a fine preliminary study on which both of these papers have been built. Janet has finished her PhD in history at the University of California after having left SUNY Plattsburgh. She went on and now teaches in Germany. And she was in the community in the first place because her husband was associated with the Air Base, so a little bit of irony there. But we've had extraordinary attention to the subject of these schools and the building and everything. It's been a wonderful laboratory for some of our students to explore their historical skills. And in that respect, you're serving a wonderful purpose here, giving them an audience.
University of California where?
At Riverside.
Anyone? Yes, Mr. Bird.
Just a general comment. I'm all in favor of any research that we can have on many different types of subjects, and I think this opportunity to review some of what happened with Champlain College is timely, and I hope that it can be made a study in long-term disciplines and ambitions in people's lives, and I think that this is the value of it, and I want to commend the students who have done the work here. I think it's very good. I'd like to thank them in particular for going after this, and I hope we can have many other types of studies of this type that will bring forth other types of things. I understand that during the Battle of Valcourt, there were some different opinions about what went on too, so I won't get into that.
You were there.
Just one last question. I'm curious to know what happened to Burlington. I mean, can we assume that the Burlington politicians weren't very strong in all this because they were an original site that the Air Force was looking at? What happened to them? Did either of you come across much information about what happened to the Burlington site?
I didn't even look into that. But that's interesting, though. That would be interesting to know.
They got IBM International Airport.
Oh, yeah.
We lived through all of it.
I've never heard any.
I just can't imagine if the monitors went down without a fight.
Not too much. We're talking about you.
No wonder my ears were
I have one more question, and it interested me. It's in Deborah's paper. She indicated, it implied that the Champlain College was something rather new, and that's about the time the State University of New York system was created. Was it the first kind of liberal arts college?
Yes.
Yes, it was.
Yes.
The first experiment, because there weren't university centers then. Everything was just state teachers' colleges, right?
Plattsburgh was one of the first. SUNY Plattsburgh became a liberal arts college owned in '62. So 10 years afterwards, they then decided to import liberal arts studies into Plattsburgh. I think only.
So the Champlain was really an experimental part of the whole university system as it was created.
It wasn't experimental. It was not experimental. It was in there to stay.
It was the beginning. It was the beginning.
The beginning, I should say,
Yeah.
the forerunner of
The beginning.
what became liberal arts.
My diploma was a BA in LA, it was called. I don't know if anybody else has anything like that.
Liberal arts?
Business administration's in liberal arts. In, not and, in. And I majored in accounting. Another person there was George Walcott. James Keeble, the attorney, was in school there with me. I don't know if he graduated from there, and I'm not sure. He went on to Albany. I'm not sure whether he graduated or not. I lived off campus and didn't know as many of the students as I could have. I had good food every night. Yes.
Anyone else? Thank you for coming.
And so at 8:30 p.m., this gathering of 40 people in the county building on Margaret Street is over. We've heard the discussion of Champlain College and the establishment of the Plattsburgh Air Force Base in Plattsburgh. This is Hometown Cable. My name is Bob Venne. We'll see you another time. Thanks for watching Hometown Cable.